having invited me to talk here about a somewhat unusual book. The book is called Inked in India, and it is about fountain pens. Not fountain pens in general, but fountain pens specifically made in India. Most of you will wonder, why is one talking about fountain pens? Aren't fountain pens dead? Aren't writing instruments dead? The way technology is advancing, will people write any more? Even today, industry estimates are that if you look at the market for writing instruments, about 10% of that consists of fountain pens. This particular book does two different things. And when I say fountain pens, I mean not only fountain pens, I mean nibs, and I also mean ink. Apart from journalistic accounts, you will not find an account which catalogues the manufacture of all of these items in India. There is no coherent history in one place of the manufacture of all of these. So this is the first thing that this book does. It's a documentation, hopefully exhaustive, of all Indian manufacturers, and I repeat, this has an India focus, of all Indian manufacturers of fountain pens, ink and nibs. Fountain pen ink. A fountain pen is what? It's originally they used to be dip pens. The difference between a dip pen is where you dipped it in an ink pot. The difference between a dip pen and a fountain pen is the fountain pen has an internal reservoir of ink. In some sense, ink started to be made before fountain pens, because originally there was printing ink, and that needed to be adapted to become fountain pen ink, because you needed a continuous flow. So in that sense, fountain pen ink started to be made in India much before fountain pens, and the earliest documented manufacturer of fountain pen ink in India was in 1883 by P.M. Bagchi and Company in Calcutta. The first recorded instance of actual manufacture of fountain pens in India was by Radhika Nath Shaha in Benares in 1907, called Lakshmi pens. And just so that you have the timeline clear in your mind, the advent of modern fountain pens is 1880s and 1890s. So in 1905, Radhika Nath Shaha was manufacturing fountain pens in India. But this book does two things. It is a documented history of all this, and it also illustrates something that Gurcharan Das will particularly be interested in. It also illustrates how faulty economic policies destroyed this manufacture over time. At the time of independence, there were the foreign manufacturers, there were the domestic ones. The first thing that happened, to cut the economic story short, was a clamping down on imports. First of ink and then on fountain pens. So there was no competition from abroad. The next thing that happened was a reservation for the small scale sector, which meant there was no entry from the large scale sector. The third thing that happened was the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. We hear about Coca-Cola exiting. We hear about IBM exiting. We may not be aware that Pilot in India used to have a subsidiary, fairly large one. Pilot exited, partly because of labor problems. So all of this exit happened, and then there was the liberalization. So obviously the Indian manufacturers found it very difficult to survive. What many people are unaware of is in the last 20 odd years, there has been an enormous amount of entry. There are Indian manufacturers today who can hold their own with the best in the world. Trouble is, they have marketing and distribution problems because they are MSME. All of you will have heard of Sheffers. Some of you will have heard of Lapis Bird. You may not know that these are now Indian companies. They've been acquired. You may not know that amongst the 5 best nib manufacturers in the world, 2 are Indian. So when you have a Lamy fountain pen, the nib is on all probability made in India, either in Delhi or in Kanpur. So this is what this book does, 2 different things: document the history, link it with economic policy, hence it is called Unmake and Make of India's Fountain Pens. There is a co-author who is also a collector of fountain pens, of Indian fountain pens like I am. His name is Shobhan Ray. He is based in Kolkata. He works for the West Bengal government. That's all I have to say. Read the book.